the waters of Mara, the waters of the bitterness of Exodus, if you remember. And bitterness is something this woman experienced in a very heartbreaking way. She witnessed actually the crucifixion of her own son. What she experienced with her boldness of faith in response to all that she saw should make her a great example for us. But unfortunately, because of what some sects in Christianity did with her, idolizing her and worshiping her, we as evangelicals naturally shy away, and we often avoid even to study this woman. I'm sure that if she would have known all this, that what everybody did with her name, her bitterness would have, I'm sure, increased. And this is true of other names in the scriptures also. Take, for example, the great name of Jehovah. Because of those who call themselves Jehovah's Witness, many Christians avoid even mentioning or even studying this great name that we have in the scriptures. You know, let me give you some of the things, by the way, they did about Mary herself. In AD 431, the first official doctrine was issued honoring the Virgin Mary as Theotokos, God's mother. Now, many Catholics today are hoping that the current Pope actually would endorse this thing, and then she will be called like that. You know what that means, by the way? They put her at the same level as God. In 1854, Pope Pius IX declared her born without original sin. In 1954, papal dogma declared her bodily assumption to heaven. The Pope also received 4 million plus signatures by 1997, pushing for an infallible pronouncement that Mary shared in the redemption accomplished by Jesus. You see what's happening? She's being put up, and Jesus is being put down. The 20th century, over 400 Mary sightings have led followers to believe that this millennial age of Mary will produce a final dogma that confirms her ongoing maternal mediation between God and humankind. These New Age type visions often picture a Mary who's predicting end-time doom for a world that can only be spared, believer says, through papal authority. We have to salvage the scriptures from those who abuse them and render to the words their true meaning. Let's remember what God says, Deuteronomy 4:2, do not add to my word, right? Just remember the last passages of the scriptures in Revelation. Whoever adds to my words, Jesus says, I will add all the curses that you find in this book. The name Miriam is that of a young Jewish woman who was chosen by God because of her great humility and love, nothing more and nothing less, a sinner as all men and women are and were except for Yeshua himself. And this passage of John 2 throws much light on who this great woman was. Let's see what happens next in the text. During the wedding feast, at a time when everyone wants to be merry, the supply of wine had come to an end. There wasn't any more wine, and of course, this was surely very embarrassing for the hosts, almost like a social tragedy. And here Miriam, seeing no way out and feeling the embarrassment for the host, does actually a very clever thing. Let's read what she does, verses 3 to 5. It says, and when they ran out of wine, the mother of Jesus said to him, they have no wine. Jesus said to her, woman, what does your concern have to do with me? My hour has not yet come. His mother said to the servant, whatever he says to you, do it. So Miriam, wanting to help the host and knowing who her son is and what he could do, she doesn't ask him to perform a miracle. She simply states the problem. She turns to him and says, they have no wine. Jesus knew that there was no wine. And Jesus was omniscient, and I think she knew that Jesus is omniscient. So what could she have meant by this statement? Why did she tell him there was no wine? As if she was saying to Yeshua, yes, I know you are the Son of God, but in your humanity, you're still my son. Can you do something about that? I don't know about other mothers, but one of the best weapons of Jewish mothers is guilt trip. They have no wine. Well, obviously they have no wine. This statement, by the way, says a lot. And this is why Yeshua here turns to her and answers her. He says, woman, what do I have to do with you? By calling her woman, he first reminds her that he is from above and that she is earthly from below. Yes, he is her son in his humanity, but he is God incarnate, something she had nothing to do with. And he reminds her of this fact by asking her this question, what do I have to do with you? And that shows as well that her mission has now ended. Actually, Mary's mission has ended when she gave birth to the Messiah. She did not have any say in what was about to be done. She had actually exceeded her responsibility. What he was saying is, what is there between you and me? What he was saying here was that she had exceeded her right as his mother. That is quite an answer, by the way, to those claims which say that she is now an active intermediary between Jesus and the believers. This passage, by the way, is for them. And it is not the only time that Yeshua, during the course of his ministry, actually distanced himself from her. Remember the words found in Matthew 12, 46 to 49. It says, while he was talking to the multitude, actually Jesus was talking to the disciples. Somebody called them and says, hey, they are outside. Your mother and your brothers are outside. And Jesus turns to them. He says, you know who my brother and my mother is? It's you, the disciples, right? And the brothers are in this passage set apart from the disciples. So they were, as the text says, brothers, because Miriam had children from Joseph after the birth of Yeshua. Some even went as far as saying that these were the sons of Joseph by a former wife, and they also gave her a name, Esha. You know, when you don't want to believe, you invent, right? Here Yeshua stated that true discipleship comes not through physical relationship, but only through obedience to the will of the Father. God is first, then your wife, your husband, or your husband, that is, and children, then the congregation of God, then the rest. The mission of Miriam stopped right after the birth of Yeshua, as the mission of John the Baptist has stopped right at the beginning of the ministry of Yeshua. But we see in the text that actually Miriam is a very persistent woman. She surely did not take offense at the words of her son. She knew her son. After all, she was a very humble woman, and she perhaps expected that kind of reaction. But her concern for the host of the wedding was very deep. See what she says in verse 5. She says, his mother turned to the servant and says, whatever he says to you, do it. As if Jesus didn't say anything. But only a mother could do that to her son. I am sure that deep inside, Yeshua was smiling. And perhaps she knew deep in her heart that her son will not have let this wedding fail. And so she prepares the servant. You know, I think he's going to do something. You go ahead and prepare yourself. And amidst all things, actually Jesus performs the miracle. And the question now is, did he do it because she told him to do so? Not at all. He knew in advance that the wine will be missing, and he was about to take this opportunity to teach the disciples and us something great in there. By the way, there's a similar event later on in the gospel. At some point, when the brothers of Jesus told him to go to Jerusalem, he answered them in the same way that he answered Miriam. See what it says in John 7. Verses 3, he says, and his brother therefore said to him, depart from here and go to Judea, that your disciples may also see the works that you are doing. And in verse 6, it says, then Jesus said to them, my time has not yet come, but your time is already there. So he seems that he didn't want to go. And then in verse 10, it says, but when his brothers had gone, then he also went up to the feast, not openly, as it were in secret. Did he go because they told him to? Not at all. He went there because he had to go there himself. So as in Cana, and so in here, he had to go there, but they preceded him in asking the question. But in his answer, Yeshua said something, his answer to Miriam, something